Before we jump into today's show, I just wanted to let you know that I have got a brand new 3-part audio series available to download right now. If you head over to donnaeade.com/3-part audio, that's all one word, no spaces, you can download your How to Build Your Authority with Podcasting audio series. This is going to address guesting and hosting. So if you're interested in either of those and you want to know how to build your authority, head over to donnaeade.com/3-part audio. The link will be in the show notes. You're listening to the Mindset and Action Podcast, the place to be to grow and streamline your business. I'm your host, Donna Eade. Let's jump into the show. Money talks, but credit has an echo. Bob Thaves. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so glad to have you here today. You may hear a difference in my voice, and that is because we're recording this, a couple of weeks ago when I wasn't feeling so great with my voice. So you've got last week and the week before, 2 episodes that were recorded before I got ill, and now you've got one that's being recorded on the tail end of it. So I apologize, but it's all right because Caitriona's going to be doing all the talking today. I'm just going to be here absorbing all the goodness with you. So Caitriona, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Tell my listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Caitriona Ellis, often pronounced Caitriona because it's written in that funny Irish way. I'm originally from Ireland, but been living in the Isle of Man for nearly 9 years now. I am a mum to 3 amazing kiddies who are 15, 13, 11, and I am self-employed. So I have a number of different companies. My most passionate business is Financial Wellness Academy, which is about empowering women with their money stuff. So often we find women take a backseat or totally hands-off role in this regard in their lives. And it's something I feel is a very dangerous thing to do, especially when life throws you a curveball and you've no idea what's going on in your money stuff. So I'm on a mission to empower and educate as many women as I can in this space. And it's something I got drawn into accidentally, as often happens in life sometimes. And it's something that I do with my whole heart based on a lot of experience of financial challenges. So I'm very well equipped to talk to those, unfortunately or fortunately. So, yeah.
And do you have a education in the financial area as well? Did you qualified accountant? Do I remember that right? Or you did accountancy?
Not quite. No. Yeah, I did. My degree was in commerce, and I majored in management and marketing. I worked in the financial services industry then for over 10 years.
That's it.
And retired out of that after becoming a mum. And whilst in that, I did a number of qualifications: financial services diploma. I'm a qualified financial advisor. And then more recently, I qualified as a fellow in the National Association of Estate Agents, more recently when I got into property in a bigger way. So lots of ticks on that front. And it's something I live and breathe. I really enjoy numbers, not from an accountant's perspective, but more from my numbers, the numbers that are important to me and my family. So yeah, that's my background. I don't operate in the regulated space, so I don't offer products or services. More in the space of education and empowerment, because I feel that's really where there's a huge gap in terms of our own upbringings. Largely, there's not many people who have those kind of conversations with their caregivers, unfortunately, and it's largely not something that's discussed in school with our children. So we've got a huge knowledge gap around it, and I'm one of many women and people in the world addressing that, because I think it's something that really, it's a life skill that we all should have some level of knowledge on to be able to get the most out of our lives and to minimize the stress and anxiety that exists around that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the reason I sort of brought up your background there is because I think it's so interesting when you have somebody who has got the sort of academic knowledge to back up their personal journey. And I'll tell you a little story. So I used to work for a bank, one of the well-known high street banks, and I was there for an entire month, and I was actually fast-tracked. They wanted me to be some somebody that sort of dealt with people in the queue, so get me out from behind the counter. They could see promise in me, and everything was going swimmingly well. And I'd gone to Peterborough for a 2-day training, and I actually got called back by my manager, and they let me go because I had 3 things that popped up on my credit report. And they said, we can't have somebody advising people on their finances when you've got stuff on your credit report. Now, it wasn't from my manager. The branch was actually really supportive of me and wanted to keep me, but it was head office that had kind of dictated this. And I'd explained it away. I mean, a little bit of backstory for me. I was a single mum who was on and off benefits. And if you've been on and off benefits at any point in your life, the benefit system isn't very quick to implement things. So I would get into a little bit of debt there. I'd get myself sorted. I'd get myself a job. I'd go and start work. Then my benefits would stop. And, all of that led to me being in a little bit of debt here and there with different things. And the 3 things that were on my report were all things that were in the past. Everything was good now. And now I had a job that I could see a good career in. I could see me going far in it. They could see me going far in it. I thought, I'm sorted. And then they whipped it out from underneath me and I was back to square one. And I was like, how is anybody ever supposed to get on top when people are reacting like that? So I like the fact that we now have this world where we don't have to just go to banks for this information. There are people out there that can provide independent information that's not skewed to certain products, but is more focused on the people and what they need and their situation. And I'm just like, I'm glad you exist, because, that actually broke my heart, because I would always wanted to work for one of the other banks, actually. And I never quite got through their system of how they test people. I never really got through all their interview systems, but I'd got this one and I was like, this is what I wanted to, because I love numbers too. This is what I want to do. This is going to be great. And then to have it taken away from me, I was just like gutted. So, but I think it's important for people to have been through financial hardships when they're going to tell somebody, this is what I think would be good, or this is why I do what I do, or you're doing that education bit. If you've never financially suffered in your life, how on earth can you empathize or understand where somebody who is in the sort of position I was in, what they're going through and how they're trying to manage? So just a little story.
And very relevant, because I think, who explains to you that decisions that you make in your earlier life will impact the outcome of certain parts of your path later down? Like, nobody, the vast majority of people don't even know that unless you've actually been through it. So the impact of that, how long it takes for something like that to get rid of it. And sometimes people find themselves with records that are not even their fault. Sometimes it's total case of mistaken identity. There's another position at the moment with an amazing young woman who is very vocal about the fact that she was in a abusive domestic position, and at the time she was working for a well-known high street bank also. But she decided, this is in more recent years, to challenge it, and she took it all the way to the top. And her work is now being recognised. So some of the banks across the board, and I think it's going as far as Europe-wide, she's behind some of the changes that they're bringing in to make changes to stuff like that. So people who, through no fault of their own, are doing the best they can with the circumstances they're in, often very difficult circumstances, and they are tarnished from a credit perspective, going forward, trying to get a mortgage, a card, whatever it is, because of something that happened in their past that was outside their control. And we need to have a little bit more understanding from our financial institutions about that. And I totally agree with you. How on earth can you have any kind of meaningful conversation with a customer if you've never actually had any experience? So, I mean, it was their loss, to have lost somebody who had that level of understanding, because how many of their customers come through the door? Because that's what really gives me my edge, I find, with the level of experience that I've had with financial challenges. I can genuinely talk heart to heart with my own experience as to how difficult that is, and particularly the emotional bit, because the number stuff is relatively straightforward in most cases, but the emotion that goes behind it is really damn tough. And sometimes it's difficult to even put words to the shame that we feel around money. the embarrassment, the stupidity, when we've made decisions, and I'm speaking personally here, that we think, what the hell was I thinking? Why did I do that? Why did I not see that? And we beat ourselves up, and there's so much emotion around that, and you can't talk to that authentically unless you've been through it. So I think that was a massive loss on their part, but I guess a huge life lesson for you on how to navigate it. So good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the topic of financial wellness for our listeners. So we are talking about business women here. We also have some businessmen that listen to the podcast. So shout out to you guys. I think financial wellness is something that we all need to have an understanding of. And I think especially when we come into the business realm where we're self-employed, everything shifts a little bit. We haven't got an employer, we haven't got somebody dealing with the tax for us, the national insurance, the pensions, all of that. It all falls on us. And I think often things slip through the cracks because we just don't know what we don't know. So even if we've got guys listening, it's completely relevant to you, although Caitriona tends to work with women. I think it's all relevant. So Caitriona, where do we even start with our financial wellness? What are the important starting points that we need to sort of consider?
For me, the single most important piece is understanding, first of all, what that even means to you. Because often I use those words and people look at me blankly as, well, what exactly do you mean? And what financial wellness means to me may be very different to what it means to you. For personally, and for the vast majority of women I work with, it means two simple words. It means safety and security. And whatever safety and security looks like for them, that's what it is. So it might look like making sure they've got an emergency fund in place, making sure that they've got a little pot that covers all those ad hoc expenses that pop up throughout the year, that when we don't have provision for them, they really can skew our monthly finances. It means that you've got something in place for your retirement. It means that if you've got children, that you've got some sort of provision for them if that's something that you want to provide for. It means maybe for some people they want to get rid of their mortgage. It means for other people actually getting a mortgage and having a home and stopping renting. So it's very individual. And I think the most important thing up front when you're dipping your toe into this is to actually understand, well, what does this even look like for me? Because for the vast majority of us, we career from one day to another, and we never take some time out to actually sit down and think, well, what do I want? And when we don't do that, what I found is we end up somewhere entirely different to what we intended. And decisions along that path can be very difficult. Whereas when we take some time out, and by time out, I mean, it could be as simple as 10, 15 minutes actually scribbling on a page, what with my ideal level of financial wellness, what would that involve? So it's not a case of scratching your head and spending days or hours and weeks on this. It's simple, and that's what I encourage most people to do, is to take some time out. Even if you're out walking the dog, if you're doing a little meditation, if you've got some downtime in the office, whatever that looks like to you, and just getting clear on, what does that mean to me? What would I like in place? If you're thinking of it from a business perspective, would it involve bringing more people on board, maybe outsourcing some of the tasks that you really don't like? So maybe some of that bookkeeping stuff that you get yourself in a tangle about. Is it having some kind of virtual finance director on board, which now is a position available, and something I see a number of people doing, which brings great value to many businesses. It means that you don't need to have somebody on the books permanently. You can contract them for a few hours, a month, a week, whatever it is you need, and you've got somebody qualified actually watching what's going on to give you a steer, somebody watching the targets that you've set and whether you land them or not. So it might be bringing some admin support in place. It might be getting a qualified bookkeeper, accountant in place. Whatever it is for your business, for you, it's just about taking the time out to give thought as to what that is. And when you have that clarity, I have found for myself and for clients, is the path that unfurls from there on out is a lot easier to navigate, because you know where you're going, you know what your due north is, your North Star, etc., and you can navigate the bumps easier because you've got your eye on where it is you're going for. And yeah, life becomes a lot easier when it comes to money. That's been my experience.
Yeah, so true. And I think it's so important that we work out what it is that financial wellness means to us. And I think we've spoken a lot on this podcast about your why and the things that you do, why you do them, because it is this intrinsic understanding of you as a human and what's important to you that is going to show you these answers. Like it's all within us in that respect, not to get too woo, but when it comes to financial wellness, for what's financial wellness to me is going to be completely different to what it is for you, is going to be completely different to what it is for the listeners. And I think the examples that you gave were very on point, especially for women. I think there is that common thread of the safety and security. And I know for me, given my history, that is a big one for me is, when I started my last job, for me, that gave me this sense of security. I was an independent woman. I didn't have to rely on anybody else. I wasn't relying on the government for help. I was doing it all myself, and I got myself in a really good position. And one of the books that I always rave about when it comes to money is Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I read that book in 2014. I got myself out of $5,000 worth of debt. I bought the first car that was my choice of car. I set a budget. I knew how much I wanted to borrow. I knew how quickly I wanted to pay it off. I did it all myself. And I tell you something, it just, the empowerment that I got from being able to do that and being able to look after my daughter and do all the things that I wanted to do was amazing. And so when you get it right, it just works, and it's so amazing to have that. And I was very clear with my intentions, and we have to educate ourselves, because I think it's one of those things where you don't know the things that you don't know. And for me, I just didn't really I'd always kind of budgeted and stuff, and I'd been through debt management when my daughter was very, very young and all of that jazz. So they talked about budgets and stuff. But when it comes to reality of you actually implementing things with your money going forward, like looking ahead, whereas I was like reactive there. I had a debt, I needed to pay it off. So we were creating a budget so I could pay off my debt. This was creating a budget so that I could save and plan and make a future. And there was just something different in doing it that way. And I think we need to take on that role of being sponges when it comes to financial wellness. I think it's something that we don't talk enough about. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation. So as business owners, it can be really difficult to kind of balance that cash flow, especially in the beginning days where you're not really sure where the money's coming from. And that's something, again, that employee mindset versus being the business owner. With the employee, you go to work 40 hours a week, you get a set amount of money. You can go to work 40 hours a week for a business owner and you could come out with nothing at the end of the week. So what should we be looking at when we're looking at our income so that we don't get ourselves into the shit?
Yeah, it's and you know what? It's a conversation I've had several times in the last few weeks, and it's something I started to realize myself. And it's about, to me, and when I moved it first, I was like, "Ooh, I'm not sure you want to say that." And then I thought, actually, I think I really should say that. And it's about when you're starting out in business, and even when you're not starting out, even when you're pretty well established, it can be really hairy and scary, and it's like a white knuckle ride at times. And the variability in income is scary. Even if you've got an emergency pot aside, or you've got a pot that is going to cover your annual expenses, and you're going to be okay, you have no certainty in self-employment as to when that next income is going to land. And something that I've been playing with myself for the last couple of years, because of that huge variability, it really freaked me out, was diversifying an income. So I'm a big supporter of diversification when it comes to assets, and I've done that for a long time, and it's always served me well, especially when the proverbial hits. And then I started to realize, hang on a second, if you did applied the same concept to your business and had different streams of income, and by different streams of income, I mean both within your business, so that if you say are a service provider and you're providing a service to a particular client, I would suggest looking at having different products and services that spread to a wider net of people, so that you have different things, because something might be flavor of the month and go, amazing, great guns, and then it drops right off. So that if you have different offerings to different clients, that's one way. But separate from that is, I think there's a huge case to be made in self-employment to counteract the variability in income for having that source of income that is steady, that allows you to put your oxygen mask on and allows you to show up in your business that you're really passionate about in a way that doesn't bring lack and scarcity and fear to it. And I've come to this conclusion because I've experienced it myself. So I am running Financial Wellness Academy. The variability in income is absolutely massive. Sometimes there's more going out than there's coming in. And I think it's really important to be honest and open about this. And I came across that first and I thought, I'm not sure you want to share that. And I thought, well, no, I really need to share this. And then that got me thinking over the last while, okay, well, what options are available to you to create an income that is regular? So I looked at, okay, well, what's my skill set? What else can I turn my hand to? And most importantly, and most valuably, what I did was I asked in my immediate circle of contacts, individuals who I knew were well connected, who could potentially have options for me that would give me that. And one option that came out, several things emerged, and the one that has been the work that has worked best is mentoring accountancy students. So I've got a background, I've got 5 years of accountancy. I didn't qualify as an accountant, I don't need to for this role, and I support and mentor those students now. I spent my morning with 3 different students, and it's a joy to do. It's not my passion, but I really enjoy it. It pays me a regular income based on the number of students I have. And it allows me to know month to month that I've got X amount coming in and things will be okay. And the more I diversify that, and then also I mentioned I live in the Isle of Man, so we've got TT on at the moment, which is huge internationally known bike race. And I've got an Airbnb. So part of my diversification was using some of the income that I have to refurbish a garage and a storeroom that was redundant, add value to my house, and also create a way to generate income and rent that out. So that's another way of doing it. Now, I didn't do those all overnight. As I was thinking about what financial wellness meant for me, diversification of income was part of that, because I thought putting all my eggs in one basket, even if it's an amazing basket, that can get upturned at any point. And the better diversified I am in income, the better that makes me feel. So I've got a number of little things like that I do. And that I did come to that I tussled with a lot of emotions around that, because I thought, how can I teach financial wellness if I am not sure on a daily basis? But I don't purport to be an amazing business person. I'm really good at financial wellness. But when it comes to running a business, it's a whole different skill set. Yeah. And it's one that can take some time, especially when you're one-man band, to really get the feel for. But it allows me, having those streams of income allows me to have my oxygen mask on and to show up to Financial Wellness Academy work with a sense of abundance and a sense of I'm okay and I'm teaching what I'm living. Because there's nothing worse than somebody saying, oh yeah, no, everything, it's all rosy, no issues, whatever. I'm like, no, there are issues and I have to face them as they arise. And, that's how we roll. So I think that's something really important to talk to people about is, you're not a failure at your business if you have to look elsewhere. But I do think when you go to do that, you put boundaries in place to say, I'm going to give it 10 hours a week, and the rest of the time I'm going to give to, what I'm really passionate about. That to me is not failure. That to me is about survival and personally giving me that feeling of safety and security. So I think we need to start having that conversation more and more. And I've had it numerous times in the last few weeks. And it has really opened my eyes as to the number of people who feel similarly, but feel that actually doing that means they failed. And I'm thinking, absolutely no, it doesn't. It means you show up to your business you're passionate about, leaving scarcity and lack out of the equation. Because when you're trying to run a business and you have that feeling running the show underneath, people pick that up. And that comes across, and then that affects your sales if you're coming from that place. And I've experienced this myself personally, and I've had a whole different experience when I've taken care of that and then shown up to it in a way that goes, yeah, okay, this is the way it is. I'm still passionate about what I do, what I teach, what I educate on, but I'm doing it in a way that works for me and ticks my safety and security boxes. So I think that's one that is worth giving some thought about for anybody listening in who feels that they may be in that category where there's more coming out and there's going in, and it's a source of stress.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what you said there is so, so important. And so I'm going to say it again. You are not a failure in your business if you have to diversify your income streams. And if you are an OG listener to this podcast, and I mean OG, i.e., you remember when it was called the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors podcast, back then when we were in an absolute dire situation with the wedding industry during COVID, one of the things that I spoke about a lot was diversifying your income streams so that we never ended up in that place again where we were, our entire financial thing was cut off. And I think it's important because I know that there are still wedding vendors that listen to this show and, just business owners in general. Just because COVID is over, technically, like the big, stuff is over, it doesn't mean that something like that won't happen again, whether that's on a global scale or on a personal scale. Something happens that you have to pause your business or something happens, you just don't know what's going to happen. So by having that diversification that is outside your business as well as diversification within your business is really, really important for that balance, for us to be able to breathe. And I really want to sort of say thank you to you, Caitriona, because we had a conversation and I've just been trying to find when we actually first spoke. And I think it was on the 2nd of May. I'm not sure. I can't find a one-to-one where it sort of says your name. But we had a conversation and I was talking to you about being in that situation where I was struggling with the lack of income generation coming in on a consistent basis, and it was worrying me. And we had this conversation about diversifying, and through that it's led to a few conversations where things are looking promising. So I want to thank you for that, and I want to say to people, it works. And just because you're doing something for somebody else doesn't make your business any less important, doesn't make it that you're failing in any way. It's protecting yourself for those lean times. And by having something that can be consistent outside of your business actually relieves some of that stress and pressure, which allows you to come at your business from a more serving perspective rather than that desperation, which I think we don't always feel that it's showing, and it doesn't always show, but it is an internal thing. When you know that, oh my God, I haven't got anything coming in this month, what am I going to do? It kind of does seep out, even if you don't realize it. It's a completely unconscious subliminal thing, I think. But when you can come at it from, it doesn't matter because I've got this stable income, I've got these other pots where I'm getting money in from here, there, and everywhere. So what happens right here isn't the be all and end all. You can come at it from that place of passion and serving the thing that you want to be doing. So I really appreciate that viewpoint, and I think it's really important to talk about it. So as we're kind of rounding up now, I want to look at what are the top 3 things that you wish that business owners understood about financial wellness.
I wish they understood, first of all, go back to my first point, what it is, what it means for them. Because when it's asked of me, I show a picture, and to me, it's a picture that is of the end of the road where I live. It's a beautiful harbour. We live by the sea, and that is almost the epitome of financial wellness to me. It means my kids and I can walk to the beach. And that encompasses, and I have the freedom with my work to do that on, whatever day I like. I decide what goes in my diary. So I think what financial wellness looks like, feels like, what involves for you. What are the other things that I wish? I wish that we could just almost vacuum pack the emotions, the negative emotions around money and how taboo it can be, and just talk about anything, because we have this concept in the East of the red tent, and when a woman is menstruating, she comes into that tent and she is nourished and nurtured and looked after. And I think we need the equivalent of a money tent where we go when we've got stuff going on, and we just talk it out. And because, you know, when you share a problem, especially amongst women, there is such there's an inner thing, a piece for every woman. You want to connect, you want to support, you want to nurture. It's just that thing that's inbuilt in you. And if more of us shared what's going on, because I know earlier this year when I was really struggling, I had a massive financial loss. It was naming what was going on, asking for help. Sometimes it wasn't even asking, it was just saying what was going on, and the help just showed up. It took so much of the weight off my shoulders. And we need to bring more conversation around this, because so many of us are struggling right now. And the struggle becomes so much easier to bear when we put a name to it. So just, you know, take the cloak and dagger off, the shame, the embarrassment, the stupidity, whatever it is, those emotions that hold so much power over us sometimes. And then I think the last thing really, I suppose, is I I wish that we'd have more of these conversations with other generations, because without us having these kind of conversations with our you know, the younger people in our lives, whether they're our own kids or others, nothing's going to change. We're going to continue this through the generations, and we will continue to put a lid on stuff that's difficult. And it's a bit like the whole, you know, Me Too movement, mental health, etc. Anything that we want to take stigma away from, we need to start discussing openly. And people still are very uncomfortable about discussing money matters. So we can't really enact any major change until we start living it ourselves and then having those conversations openly with others, especially the younger people in our lives, because our younger people don't often have the hang-ups we have. And I see this with my kids. It was an unintentional outcome of me working on this myself. I hear them having conversations with their friends going, is it a need or is it a want? And you know, if it's a need, maybe your parents might sort it. And if it's a want, well, you know, here's some ideas as to how you can generate the cash. And I'm like, wow, they're just absorbing what the conversations we have, and then they're paying it forward. And like, yes, this is how, you know, things change. And I'm sure there are probably some parents swearing me because of the questions that I've pushed forward, but like, I see the difference that's making with my children, and they don't have the hang-ups I had. So I think that's really important, to start changing the conversations and have those conversations openly around the table in our homes with our friends, with our loved ones, and start changing the needle on this, because otherwise nothing's going to change. We're just going to keep spinning the wheels in it.
Awesome. That's so good. I'm just so much goodness in that. And I completely agree with having the conversations about it. I think it is something that is still very taboo, and it needs to not be as taboo, because, you know, if I had, you know, and we didn't know each other really before that conversation that we had. We'd met on a networking meeting. We had a one-to-one, and there I was telling you my financial issues, like, you know, this sort of unheard of. But if I hadn't have said that, you wouldn't have been able to come back to me with some ideas, and I wouldn't be able to be in a completely different situation right now, feeling a lot calmer and a lot more, you know, okay with where I am than I was then. I mean, I don't know how I would have felt, you know, this is nearly a month later, and, you know, there's not a lot that's particularly changed within my business that I could sort of see a light at the end of the tunnel or anything. So if I hadn't have had that conversation and been open with you, then I wouldn't have been able to put these other things in place that have kind of lightened the load a little bit. So I think that is a real testament.
And it's that simple. Like there's you know, a lot of people and that was one thing that I mentioned earlier when you were making a point, is that there's so much out there. There's a bit of snobbery around it, I think, that it's so complex, and we really need somebody super qualified at actuarial levels to figure this out for us. And I had a conversation as recently as yesterday about this, and I'm like, no. A lot of this, yes, there are, you know, there can be more complex points to consider, like taxation and all that kind of stuff. But to get some of the really basic pieces in place, often it's just a conversation like you and I had, and having the courage to speak it. And as the listener, making sure there's no judgment around it, because when we start judging others on their money stuff, the position that they're in, then we lose that trust. So we have to come to it from a place of, look, we've all been there, especially if you've been there, you know, with knobs on, like I have in terms of the financial challenges. you bring understanding to it. And if I've never walked in your shoes, I cannot for a second put any judgment behind anything that you share or anybody shares. So we have to bring that listening ear. If we've got family or friends who are coming to us with these kind of challenges, we have to leave judgment outside the door and just bring our best supportive self to it. And sometimes all that person needs who's struggling is just an ear, and sometimes an idea pops. But the most important point I'm trying to make here is that this is not rocket science, a lot of it, and we have within us absolutely the capability ourselves and with our circle to resolve this. And like, there's merit in saying that old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved, because it is. Like, it might not have been me who might have been able to join the dots for you, but it was somebody else I could connect you with who could potentially give you something that would solve a big part of that problem for you. And had you not shared it and the idea dropped in for me, who knows where either would be. And that conversation for me was the first time I had it with you. I didn't want to say it was with you for confidentiality reasons, but I've had that conversation many, many times since. And I kind of think, we don't talk about it. And I knew when I shared it with you, I did feel some of that shame. And I thought, seriously, Caitriona, you have to get over this, because you can't talk to it unless you get over it yourself. And because of our conversation, I've said that many times since, and I really think there's something in that we need to start shining. And I've actually suggested to a large community I'm in that we do a webinar on it, because there are too many people suffering on this thing, thinking that they're failing because they're not making it, or they don't have like 5-figure, 6-figure months, whatever. And they think they're failing. So, I think it's really important for our mental health. And it's the number one reason mental health is financial challenges. So if we don't talk about this, then that's going to continue to cause us issues. How many suicides are because of money reasons? Like, we have to start changing our conversation around this.
Absolutely. It is so, so important. And just that, what you said there about, like taking the shame away from it and not judging, because you haven't been in somebody else's shoes, so you can't possibly understand how they got to where they are. So just taking it that this is where they are, what can I do to help? Is there anything I can do to help? Is a much better way of looking at it than thinking, gosh, well, I would never have done that, because you just don't know what you would have done in that situation. So really fantastic conversation. Absolutely loved having you on the show to talk about this. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? Where do you hang out?
For business owners, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Caitriona Ellis. My website is financialwellnessacademy.co.uk. I'm on YouTube. Financial Wellness Academy has a weekly vlog, so I do little short snippets on various topics. So you can connect with me on any of those, on any of those avenues. And if you want to have a complimentary financial wellness clarity call, just drop me a message on any of those platforms, and we can set that up and have a non-judgmental, open, honest chat.
Brilliant. I shall put all those links in the show notes for you guys. Now, before we hop off, I do have my little speed round that doesn't end up being so speedy if I get my voice involved in it, but I'll try not to, because, I'm trying to protect the voice right now. So maybe it'll go a bit quicker. I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask you, if that's all right.
Sure.
So what is the book that has made the biggest impact on your life so far?
Ooh, most recently, I would say it's Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
I have got that one on my list to read. So awesome. What is your favorite podcast to listen to?
Stephen Bartlett at the moment, because my 15-year-old has introduced me to him, and he keeps telling me nuggets, and I'm like, yeah, that young man speaks a lot of sense. So I really love him.
Yeah, he does. And I'm halfway through reading his book as well. So that's a good one to.
And actually, I'd add Brené Brown as well, actually, because speaking of shame, she's definitely one to follow on that. Her podcast is amazing on that.
Yeah, she's fab. Awesome. And what's your go-to snack when you're in a hurry?
Oh, go-to snack. It's probably pot of hummus and pile of chopped veggies. If I'm trying to be good, it's probably a bar of dark chocolate if I'm not feeling so virtuous.
I love that. I love that. You see, and there's the difference in people, because I have gone from eating milk chocolate because I love chocolate. Like my dad used to work for Mars. He used to bring bags of the stuff home. So I am a chocoholic, and it has taken me 40 years to wean myself off milk chocolate and go to dark chocolate. So I feel like having dark chocolate is very much different
I
people, you
still eat
see?
milk chocolate too. I still eat milk chocolate, but yeah,
Yeah,
the other
I
one
do.
satisfies me better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome. And then lastly, what is your ultimate me time thing to do?
Ooh, it's probably a sea swim. Yeah, a sea swim. Although I did binge on Bridgerton, yeah, the last couple of nights. So depending on what mood I'm in. Again, probably virtuous would be a sea swim. Not so virtuous, probably vegetate on the couch with some Bridgerton or
I love
something.
that. I love that. And I'm totally jealous of your proximity to the sea. It's been something that's really been playing on my mind recently. So very jealous of that. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been fantastic conversation. I hope you have taken some nuggets away, guys. I'll be back next week with another episode. And yeah, if you missed our Monday episode, our mini Mindset Monday episode, then go back and have a listen for more of us together. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.